Hello, Mr. Montalvo here, and U.S. history, and today we're going to be discussing the peace talks following the end of World War I. Our objective for today is to examine Wilson's 14 points and investigate reasons why the United States' Senate refused to support the Treaty of Versailles, focusing on opposition to the League of Nations. Now, after the destruction caused by World War I, trying to think of what, according to Wilson, a perfect peace plan would look like. Think about the terms he put up for armistice that we discussed in the previous lesson. Now, some important vocabulary to understand in moving forward in this topic. The first being self-determination. Self-determination meaning the right of national groups to their own territory and own form of government. And then the second, reparations. Reparations being cash payments for some sort of loss. Now, President Wilson visited Paris, London, Milan, and even Rome to work on his peace plan. It was the longest stretch of time a President of the United States was away from the United States. In January 1918, Wilson outlined his peace plan called the 14 Points, meant to prevent international problems from causing another war. Now, the war was extremely destructive, and everyone could understand why the peace talks were so important to avoid another war in that capacity. The first point called for an end to secret alliances. If you remember when we discussed the effects of alliances on the first day of this lesson, we understood that this system of secret alliances created what is often referred to as a domino effect, in which one nation would declare war to another nation and their allies would do the same and follow, just causing this worldwide conflict. Additional points called for freedom of the seas, free trade, and a limit to arms. If we remember, another one of those reasons moving forward into World War I was the idea of militarism or amassing these huge armies and arsenals of weapons. The points also supported the principle of self-determination of various areas, various peoples having their own say in their own governments. Now, why might Wilson make the end of secret agreements the first point of his plan? He was very intentional in doing so. Think about why he might do that. Now, the 14th point was the most important. It called for a general association of nations, or a league of nations, as the group's title would be formed, to protect the independence of countries and act as a peacekeeping body throughout the world. Once again, with the ultimate goal of preventing the destruction of a worldwide conflict. Now, once again, open diplomacy, that idea of secret alliances, freedom of the seas, allowing that the seas be open to trade, removal of economic barriers, the reduction of armaments, militarism, if we remember, adjustment of colonial claims, that idea of self-determination, that various colonies deserve to be their own independent, sovereign nations, conquered territories in Russia, prevention of Bulgarian sovereignty, or rather Belgian sovereignty, the restoration of French territory, redrawing of Italian frontiers, division of Austria-Hungary, breaking that country up, the redrawing of Balkan boundaries, limitations on Turkey, the establishment of an independent Poland, and the creation of an association of nations, or what would become that League of Nations. Now, President Wilson convinced the Allies to accept the proposal. He was successful in that part. The diplomats from the more than 30 nations met in Paris, Versailles, France. key issues were decided by the Big Four, pictured here below. Woodrow Wilson of the United States, David Lloyd George of Britain, Georges Clemenceau of France, and Vittore Orlando of Italy. By June 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was ready. And under the treaty, Germany had to take a complete blame of the war. In addition to that, Germany would have to pay $300 billion in reparations. In addition to that, the size of their military would be limited. The Treaty of Versailles contributed to the economic collapse of Germany after World War I by devaluing German currency. In addition to that, the Rhineland, an area that was extremely profitable in minerals for the Germans, was taken from them and given to France to help pay off their debts. The Treaty of Versailles would lead to an increase in Germany's desire to regain its power. And when we look at the rise of fascism, what would eventually lead into World War II, we can make very strong connections between how the Germans felt after this treaty and their determination to regain their power and their sovereignty. The treaty provided for the nations of Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia to be formed from the land once owned by Germany. Henry Cabot Lodge did not like the fact that members of the League had to protect other countries, believing that this provision would cause future European conflicts, European wars. He's linking this idea of Woodrow Wilson's 14-point of alliances and entanglements, as even George Washington would say, to this League of Nations, saying that it might cause more problems than it solves. So how might Germany react to the Treaty of Versailles? Just think about that with all the sanctions, with all the things that are put in place against them, as we just discussed. Now, the United States senators who opposed the Treaty of Versailles objected to the membership of the League of Nations. The United States, through the Senate's actions, demonstrated its return to a policy of isolationism. Now, we have to understand that this is the system of checks and balances in play here that we've discussed in 7th grade or earlier in U.S. history. Yes, the president is the lead diplomat, but all treaties have to be approved by the Senate. So as much as Wilson wanted this done, the U.S. Senate still had ultimate say. As a result of the pressure from this provision, President Wilson suffered a stroke in November 1919. And it was not until 1921 that America would join the League of Nations, due to many opponents, people against it in the United States. Now, just think about what we've discussed so far and try to infer why the Senate might reject the Treaty of Versailles based on what you know so far. Now, as we wrap our discussion regarding World War I, it's important to take a moment and pause to understand how this huge worldwide conflict took place and the human effect that it has. Take a look at some of the numbers of the map. So the total number of military and civilian casualties in World War I was more than 41 million. Both military and civilian. There were over 18 million deaths and 23 million wounded, ranking it among the deadliest conflicts in human history. And on this map, minor countries are not included. Neither are the numbers from the United States. Now, this map on the eve or right before World War I shows the alliance system and helps you better understand this system of alliances and how it might contribute to the outbreak of World War I. Now, this, in addition to 4 other documents, are available below, linked to this today's lesson, today's lecture. And I highly recommend that you analyze those constructed response questions in order to better understand World War I and its effects. So that's linked. In addition to that, there's an assessment, which is a guided DBQ essay focusing on the Treaty of Versailles. Now, closing, try to describe the negative effects the Treaty of Versailles had on Germany. That's all for now. Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon.